Okay, everybody, here is a review video that we have for our exam that's going to be due on the 28th. So, starting with the legislative branch, make sure you know what a filibuster is and how a filibuster is only in the Senate and how you need 60 votes to close debate. And that's called cloture, and you invoke that when you want to try to end a filibuster or debate. Also, remember it's only 51 for a presidential nomination, so 60 for any type of bills, 51 for a presidential nomination. Um, know what the bill amendment process is and how a bill could be introduced by any member of Congress. If it's a revenue bill, it could be only introduced in the House per the Constitution, and a lot of amendments come during the floor vote or the floor debate. Um, know about term limits. What are some of the reasons for enacting term limits? It might create more open seats. It might create better competition. Things like that. Know that incumbents will have an advantage. Know what an incumbent is. Remember, interest groups are going to donate to a candidate more because, an incumbent more because an incumbent will win about 90% of the time. Know that party control of Congress throughout the years kind of goes back and forth. It could be the Republicans one year, the Democrats another. Know what pork is and how pork can be put into place to maybe make a candidate or a congressperson look good, um, and that it can be used to bring more money to a district. Know what earmarks are. Earmarks will be something that are money set aside um, for a government program, like we talked about Head Start, um, maybe some type of social welfare programs. Those are put into place to have programs that run, indefinitely, and you have money for them. We talked about the advantages of being an incumbent. You have name recognition. Uh, you are able to be put on more prestigious committees, and also you see more money that are it is given to you from interest groups, and incumbents win about 90% of the time. Know what the foreign policy responsibilities of Congress is. Remember, Congress can declare war. The Senate can approve treaties. The Senate can approve ambassadors. Know the power of seniority. And this is one of the things that kind of goes against term limits. Power of seniority usually gives people the opportunity to be put on more prestigious committees, which could be given out to people who have good experience in a field, and it is a way to get more money into your district as well. Know the Senate leadership positions. In the House positions, Senate leaders, we have the majority leader and the minority leader. The majority party in Congress will nominate a leader, and the minority party in Congress will nominate a leader. And generally, the majority party leader is in charge of kind of procedural things at the Senate level. Current majority leader is Chuck Schumer. If Chuck Schumer isn't there, we have the president pro temp, who is in place is the president of the Senate if the vice president is not present. Know what whips do? Whips kind of keep people in line, trying to get them to adhere to party discipline. Know what the House positions are. As of today, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. Um, the Speaker of the House will generally let bills through. They can block bills. They can appoint members to committees. They can kind of act as gatekeepers for the legislation, and they can rule on House matters of procedure. Know the processes of impeachment. Know that the impeachment will start in the House. Articles of impeachment will be introduced, and then and then they will then send the articles of impeachment over to the Senate, And the Senate will kind of act as the jury, where the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will act like a judge, and you need 66 votes to oust a president, which has never happened. No California legislative bodies. The House equivalent in California is the Assembly, and the Senate equivalent is the California Senate. So we have the California Senate and the California Assembly. Know what gerrymandering is? You guys probably have a pretty good handle on that. We have the census every 10 years, and that is used to draw up representation lines. And the intentional manipulation of those lines to benefit a party or a ethnic group or a socioeconomic group is called gerrymandering. Okay, so for Chapter 8, know what the president's functions for elites are. Maybe to pay attention to elite concerns. Presidents will get the blame for economics times that are bad, but generally they have little effect on what the economy can do. Just know the basic 5 functions of the president, the psychological functions that Greenstein spoke about. Be able to know that. You don't have to know each and every single detail about it, but generally know what their roles are. What the president's role is as far as bringing calm to people and explaining things and getting people to buy into their agenda and all that. Probably one of the most informal powers that the president has that is really important is the power to persuade. Note in the executive branch, the executive structure, that we have the president and the vice president, and then we have a variety of cabinet level positions that help the president and advise the president. Know what the War Powers Act. Remember, the War Powers Act was done to kind of restrict the president's war-making ability or war-making powers. Remember, the president can send troops to a conflict for up to 60 days without congressional approval. Anything past that, you need to run it by Congress. Know the president's formal powers, including foreign policy. The executive order, which carries the weight of a law. The presidential ability to pardon. Just know the variety of them, and also that the president will nominate ambassadors and ministers, and they are the ones that help keep diplomatic relations with other countries. Remember, the president's role in the bureaucracy, they kind of act as the CEO over the bureaucracy, and they can issue executive orders that are given, that have the weight in law as a kind of a directive to the bureaucracy to carry out this action. Remember that presidents are immune from lawsuits that arise out of their formal powers, as long as they're within the scope of their job duties. If it's something outside of the scope of their job duties, like maybe a sexual harassment case, they don't have immunity for those from that. Impeachment we talked about. Remember, Nixon was going to be impeached, but he eventually resigned because he committed a crime, and he was going to be impeached anyway. Know about approval ratings and how Clinton's approval ratings actually went up during his impeachment. Usually things that can affect approval ratings are war, which could have a positive effect, like we saw with FDR, who maintained a consistent high approval rating during World War II. Scandals, Clinton's approval rating went up, but also bad economic cycles can affect it, like George W. Bush. Know that George W. Bush kind of coined the term shock and awe in his attack on Iraq. Remember, his approval rating went up during 9/11, but then it slowly decreased all the way to under 30% when we went through Iraq, Afghanistan, and the bad economic cycle that we had. Also, Bush kind of cut taxes on the wealthy and businesses to kind of encourage competition and encourage investment. Know about California's plural executive branch. and how we have the Senate here with the Assembly as the legislative branch, but in the executive branch, we have the governor, the lieutenant governor, and also a bunch of individual offices that are elected, which could kind of be comparable to what the Senate, what the cabinet is here in the United States. So the advisors are actually voted in as opposed to nominated by the president. And they also advise the governor on certain issues, and they can definitely be two different parties as well. Going to the court system, know what judicial restraint is and know what judicial activism is. Judicial restraint is you wait for cases to come to you. Judicial activism is where you go out and look for cases. Know the general jurisdiction of court, things that are arising out of arguments against constitutionality of issues. Anything having to do with a federal law. So basically know that. No examples of federal crimes. Hate crimes are federal crimes. Taking drugs across state lines. Taking people across state lines. Drive-by shootings. Know that the court has a concept of judicial discretionary review, meaning they don't have to hear every case that is that is appealed to them. They can take a case in if 4 justices agree to hear it. And then they issue what's called a writ of certiorari, which is a directive to lower courts to send any type of material to them that might have be able to aid them in making a decision. Know what a writ of mandamus is. A writ is basically an order to mandate, so they're mandating something. Know that we get about 8,000 appeals to the Supreme Court each year, and then that is kind of shows the issue of discretionary review, where we only see about 200 get heard in front of the court. No California Supreme Court members are actually elected, and they are much more diverse in the California Supreme Court, and they have to run for re-election. Know the jurisdiction of federal court, which we talked about, concepts arising, and know the civil side also. Obviously on the criminal side, it may be constitutional questions as well as breaking of federal codes. But on the civil side, you might be able to sue somebody. You have to use federal court to sue somebody that live in a different state. If a state is suing a state, kind of know those avenues as well. And know the path of the Supreme Court, that you go from the bottom level all the way up. So generally, if you start in federal court, you go from the federal district court up to the appeals court and then to the U.S. Supreme Court. In California, you'll go through the trial courts up to the Circuit Court of Appeals, then to the California Supreme Court. And if you don't get the relief that you want, you can appeal it directly to the United States Supreme Court. Know what Article 3 is, just the basics. I don't expect you to know everything. Remember, judges at the state level are nominated by the governor, approved by the Commission of Judicial Appointments, and then they have to run for re-election. On the federal level, remember, they are put on the bench for life. Know what stare decisis is, and that's precedent, and we kind of had a pretty good conversation about that. So know what precedent is, and how generally the court isn't really supposed to go against precedent, but we've seen them do that in the past. Know what amicus curiae is, and how it is where if there is some type of case that goes in the front of the Supreme Court and it may affect an interest group, the court might ask them to file a brief, a friend of the court brief, to help the court understand their position on an issue. Know what the concept of original intent is. Should the justices use wisdom or constitutionality when they go and try to decide a case? Don't worry about number 15 here. Number 16, no Windsor versus United States, that reversed DOMA. And we talked about the 3 levels of the California court system and judicial nationalism. Martin versus Hunter Lessie, which made it legal for the Supreme Court to determine whether or not state decisions are constitutional or not. Just know the Electoral College as well. Know that we have 538. You need 270 to 270 to win. Know the differences about Maine and Nebraska. We talked about what a faithless elector was. Know that Bush v. Gore was the closest electoral college result in history, and the biggest landslide was probably Reagan Mondale. And know that we had two instances actually in the past 20 years where a candidate won the popular vote but lost the electoral college. Okay, so basically know those, and you should be okay. All right, we'll talk to you soon.